interesting to answer our questions. So let's get right into it. I'm going to introduce each panelist for this first question. I'd like to hear from everyone. So I'll introduce you briefly. As I do that, please know I'm just scratching the surface of the talents and experiences that this group has. Our first panelist I'd love to hear from is Lauren Watts, and she is an engineer with GE, and she shared with me that one of the reasons that she got into Toastmasters and specifically speech contests was to get out of that engineer box that she's in all day at work. So Lauren, if you would kick us off, our first question is, what benefits did you personally experience from participating in speech contests?
Yeah, thanks, Joan. Bob made a joke at the beginning of the hour in the intro about having that engineering mindset and about redirecting his wife in how she does her things. And I can absolutely relate to that. In my club, GE Power Toasters, I think most of us are engineers and most of us have been together for multiple years. And we can absolutely get into a rut where we're giving the same type of feedback, we're giving the same type of speeches, and we just know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And we just tend to get into that rut. By competing and watching the speech contests, it is absolutely an opportunity to hear how different people do the same thing differently. Table topics especially. When I did my first table topics competition, several of the speakers would say, fellow Toastmasters and esteemed guests, before they started their table topic. I had never heard of that approach before. And I really liked that because it was a way to kind of draw the audience in and get started and really kick things off on the right foot. Whereas in my group of introverted engineers, we just got right down to business. We went right into the topic, ended when we were supposed to end. And well, that's fun. That's just one example of something that I learned by going to speech contests and learn how to really shape the way that I approached a problem and just bring some variety to what we were doing.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. And I loved that little nuance that you shared with me as well about just something as simple as a greeting. We can always pick up something. I can learn something from everyone. So thank you for sharing that. All right, well, let's hear next from Miss Anita Davis, who is in the finance department at Michelin and has competed in several different contests and held leadership roles within Toastmasters. And I was delighted to learn from her as we got to know each other that she actually was helping found the club that I participate in as well. So would you share with us, Anita, what benefits did you personally experience from speech contest? Oh, I think you might still be muted. There you go.
Thank you so much, Joan. This is a great question, as there are so many benefits that I've received, both professionally and personally. First and foremost, though, the major benefit that I received was actually learning to use my voice. I grew up in a family where my stepfather believed that children were to be seen and not heard. And so I was used to stifling my voice, and it carried me into adulthood. And there were many times that I wanted to speak up and speak out, and I just didn't have the confidence to do so. So that led me to find in my adulthood, going into corporate America and then also in education at the time, that led me to find Toastmasters. I'd heard about the organization from a family member, and I knew that I lacked confidence in expressing myself. And so I set out to find this organization that could help. And one of the things that I learned was that it's such a safe space. Even delivering a speech in front of hundreds or thousands of people, it's still a safe space. Toastmasters provides that platform. Professionally, it has helped me to be able to speak up for what it is I need from managers. It's also helped me to speak up regarding what my worth is, what my value is, and what I bring to the company. So there are so many ways that Toastmasters has helped me, but first and foremost, the most important thing that it did for me was giving me a voice and giving me a platform to share those things that are inside of me.
Thank you so much for that heartfelt answer, Anita. And I'm really glad we're recording this because I have a feeling someone might approach you later and say, could we use this as an advertisement for Toastmasters? That was a beautiful, beautiful explanation of specific benefits that can impact everyone. So thank you for that. All right, Mr. Douglas Wilson, I think you're like a Toastmasters legend. I don't think I could read everything on your Toastmasters bio, but let me just share with the audience that he joined Toastmasters in 1968, and only 1 year later, he was second place in an international speech contest. So this guy must be a really quick learner, and we appreciate that. Along the way, he has served in leadership roles at many levels within Toastmasters and helped found a Sumter, South Carolina club chapter. He has finished 11 pathways. He's become a DTM 4 times. And again, the bio is too long to really share, but I'm very curious with your vast experience in life and in Toastmasters. I'm going to ask you to be even more specific with the question, Douglas, like, how specifically have contests help you in ways that maybe even go above and beyond how Toastmasters has helped you?
Well, thank you, Joan, for that question. The one thing you left out was there was a 30-year hiatus between the first time I joined Toastmasters and the second time I joined Toastmasters. So it wasn't like I've had 60 years in Toastmasters. But when I came back to Toastmasters, I came back because I didn't consider myself to be an effective speaker. And there's a difference between being a good speaker and being an effective speaker. An effective speaker is one who moves people to action. And a good speaker is one who says, oh man, that was really good presentation. We really loved it, but nothing happens. So I came back to Toastmasters specifically to compete and ended up in leadership for 4 years. But when I finally got into competition, what I quickly learned was, one, you don't get ready, you don't compete. Let me rephrase that. You don't get better so you can compete. You compete so you can get better. And it's because of the fact that in Toastmasters, we give a speech, we get an evaluation, and then we move on. We give a speech, we get an evaluation, and we move on. And we hardly ever get an opportunity to take a single speech and really work on it, to master it, to perfect it. And that's something we do in competition. And so in competition, we learn how to perfect those fundamentals of gestures, facial expressions, body language. But more importantly, we learn how to have an effective voice. And I think the other thing that it taught me was the courage to step out of my box, because I was a technical support person in computers for years too, to step outside of your comfort zone and be able to ask for things you want. 1 year when I was competing for the regional championship, I called the headquarters in Atlanta of the company that I worked for and said, hey, I'm representing Toastmasters in South Carolina in the regional competition. Would this company like to support me? Would like to benefit me or to sponsor me? And they said, sure. You've got a company credit card. Use it for your transportation, your food, your lodging, and let us know how it turns out. I said, oh, that's really cool. And so I would never have even asked for that had it not been for the courage I got through Toastmasters and for the courage I got through competition, which helped me become a better me.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And so far, I'm hearing a couple of themes already. Get out of our boxes, which is fun to think about when we're in our Zoom boxes here. Getting out of the box and then finding more courage to ask for what we need, right? Finding that voice. So, all right. Well, I am delighted to welcome our next guest, Mr. Charles P. Austin Jr., who has the biggest smile I think I've ever seen in my life. So Charles, the question that everyone's asking is, or answering is, what benefits did you experience from participating in a speech contest?
The biggest benefit that I experienced is reaching deep inside yourself and sharing things that you would never share with anyone else. As I was growing up, I didn't feel that I had a voice. I found that because of my disability, I was often shut out of things that most people got the benefit to actually participate in. And I found that through the speech that I won, the district was something that I had never shared with anybody before I came to Toastmasters. So the biggest lesson I learned is about the message that you want to give. And I found that through my voice, because I do a lot of work with people with disabilities, and I find that because I have a disability, cerebral palsy, that they're able to see someone in me that they can relate to what they're going through. And oftentimes as people with disabilities, we're shut out, as men and women and children with disabilities, we're shut out of things that the so-called normal society is shut out of. And so I found that coming to Toastmasters is that safe space where I can just share and people accept it no matter what.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I realized I was so eager to hear your answer that I didn't properly introduce you. I moved on from that. So for the audience, if you don't know Mr. Austin, he is an activist. He is active in the volunteer community in his area in Columbia. He has 3 DTMs. He was the charter member of the Webster Toastmasters Club, which I think must have happened while he was getting his master's degree in human resource management. He has had over 70 Toastmasters awards and several area leadership positions. And I think I've counted this right. I think he is the current member of 5 clubs. So this is a busy man. So thank you for sharing your answer as well.
7.
All right. 7 clubs. Okay. Wow. Wow. All right. Well, next up to answer this first question about what benefits, personal and professional, you've experienced is Marlo Hogue. And Marlo, we say that we are Toastmasters sisters because we joined Toastmasters within a month or 2 of each other. And thank you, for the support you've given me. She's one of my heroes. She is a songwriter, amazing musician, activist, speaker, podcast leader, lover of languages and travel and cultures. And I can't say enough good things about Marlo, but she's going to share with us what she benefited from speech contest. Welcome, Marlo.
Thank you, sister. Hey, good morning, Toastmasters. My benefits, personally, the Toastmasters speech contest taught me how to formulate my story and how to make that story resonate and activate others. I grew up in a tradition that automatically put young people in the front. So I was put in front of people from kindergarten on up. So I knew how to get in front of people and say things, but how to formulate things correctly, I did not know. So that was what Toastmasters did for me, and especially the speech contest did for me on a professional level in a way. That energy of being in the room with great people with great stories and being challenged every step of the way to up your game. That was very important for me because I am a perfectionist and I love criticism. So I feed off of your critique. That just makes me go get it harder. The professional way, as far as my activism, shortly after the speech contest, I was involved with what is called a hackathon for incentivizing healthcare. And I was in charge of a group of geneticists and farmer executives and policymakers for creating a new form of healthcare payment. And we had 2 days, 13-hour days to create a new form of healthcare payments. And I was in charge with presenting that. And they asked me, could you present it? And I said, yeah, I'm a Toastmaster. That was the first thing that popped out of my mouth. And I had 5 minutes to present it along with another lady from Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we presented it well. And I was contacted back to actually continue working on how to incentivize healthcare. So the speech contest did that for me. I was in the room with over 500 people. So the speech contest pushed me that way.
Thank you so much for sharing, Marlo. So I'm so glad we could hear from everyone on this, and thank you for sharing those benefits. I'm getting motivated myself. As we move to the next couple questions, I may not call on every single panelist, but as panelists, if you feel you have something that you would like to share for each question, you can raise your hand and I'll make sure to call on you next for this one. But I would love to hear from Lauren and Anita next on this question. And personally, I will share that quite bluntly and honestly, when I, for the first couple of years in Toastmasters, saw emails coming about speech contests or our club leadership would invite us to participate, I honestly just checked out. Like mentally, I was like, I'm too busy. I'm not competitive. I'm happy in my club. I'm challenged enough. So I wondered if Lauren or Anita or anyone else, if you've experienced that inner resistance or obstacles, and if you did, how you got over them. So Lauren, you shook your head a little bit. So.
Yeah, thanks, Joan. I've been on both sides of the coin. I've been a competitor and I've also helped to organize the contests and PDTAs and et cetera, et cetera. And it's amazing how much work goes into just getting ready, just getting prepared for the speech contest. It's not as easy as just tapping 5 people on the shoulder and saying, hey, are you free on Saturday morning? It's not that simple. But I think when I was an area director and had the opportunity to organize the area contests, it for me was an exercise in being humble. Right? It's a lot to ask people to give up their Saturday morning and to have people, put off things that they could be doing, especially during football season, right? And just being able to be humble and recognizing what goes into preparing for a contest has absolutely helped me in other aspects of my life. One of the benefits, I think, especially of the international speech contest is, Charles said it before, right? You're hearing things from people that maybe they haven't shared before, or maybe that they're hesitant to share, right? So you're putting together this contest where people are bearing it all. And that's different from me than my everyday life, right? Like I mentioned, I'm an engineer. We do things in black and white. And when you're inviting people to share their deeper messages and share things that are important to them, it puts a bigger importance on what you're doing. It's more than just being efficient. It's more than just making sure you hit a deadline, right? You're inviting people to share things that are really important to them. And that's really been a benefit to me.
Thank you for sharing that. So what I'm hearing from your answer is that we're not going to sugarcoat this and tell anybody in the audience that it's easy, or but like many things that are not easy, it's worth it because the benefits outweigh. So Anita, do you have anything to add to that, of like kind of getting over those obstacles of feeling, I don't know if I can really do this?
Absolutely, absolutely. When I first became a Toastmaster and I started hearing speeches from others, I developed a love of hearing speeches. I became a connoisseur. So I would go on YouTube and I would find speeches from different competitors in speech contests. And I would watch those over and over because I absolutely loved the messages. One of my favorite speakers was David Henderson. he delivered a speech called The Best Doctor. And I remember what that evoked in me and that feeling that I had after hearing that. So I became a great lover of speeches, but I never saw that in myself. My experience with becoming interested in speaking was a little different. Mine was brought about by a force, a powerful force in Toastmasters. Her name is Subi Mathur. She came up to me and she actually demanded that I join a speech contest, that I compete. And at the time, it took my breath away because I was totally nervous about that. But I looked at Subi and I'm like, excuse me? She said, you need to get in this speech contest. At that moment, I realized, I said, you know what? Subi is a master of great speeches. And she's been a Toastmaster forever. And if she sees this in me, then I can see it in myself. So she basically saw in me something that told her I could do it. So she actually spoke that belief into me before I even had it. It's very important that we encourage others to use their voice and to become speech contestants, because sometimes we are not capable of seeing in ourselves what others see in us. And I'm so grateful to her for doing that, because it allowed me to step out of my box and try it.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And I don't know that we have a grammarian on this event today, but I would just like to tag that you said, spoke that belief into me. That hit me very powerfully. So thank you for sharing. So again, this actually leads perfectly into our next question, because the obstacles weren't so important, right? What was important was this inner feeling that it needed to be done, and or a belief from someone else that it needed to be done. So I would love to ask Charles to answer a related question, which is, who or what pushed you to take that step to enter the contest?
There were several people. One of them was, the first person was Jaquie Parmalee Bates, because I remember, because we were in Saturday AM together, and I remember she kept saying, you have such powerful messages, you need to enter the speech contest. And for a while I kept saying, no, forget it. What are you doing? And I remember after her constantly urging me, I finally entered the Saturday AM club contest one year. I didn't win. I finished there last, but I remember she came up to me and several other people and told me how much they were inspired by what I had to say. And I remember that feeling, even though I didn't win, I touched somebody, touched someone. Another person was Subi Mathur, who has encouraged me. Every time I see her, she tells me how proud she is, but she doesn't know how much she has impacted me. She's one of those people who actually inspired me to get multiple DTMs because of what she's done. The third person would be Douglas Wilson, who actually coached me while I was, the year I won the district and went to Moesha. Yeah, so, and he's constantly giving me little nuggets of wisdom, and most of them I take. Some of them I have a tendency to venture, and most of the time it doesn't work very well. But those are the three people who have had as well as many others, Jessica as well, Jessica White. But those are the four people who have meant so much to me, of many.
Thank you for sharing that, Charles. And I can speak for myself that I joined Toastmasters for professional development, but I've stayed because of the relationships that I've made inside Toastmasters and the people. And so that's clear that, you know, we are all speaking belief into each other, as Anita beautifully said. All right, so I know that you've got some good stories. I want to hear some stories. I bet that when you were getting ready for a speech contest or participating one, or something has happened that stands out in your mind as a moment that was either funny, scary, uplifting, where it will be marked in your mind forever. That happened to be at that speech contest or related to that. So I would love to hear from Douglas is shaking his head. So I look for the head shake to know who to ask for this. And so Douglas, would you share what stands out? What was like a moment that will always be marked in your mind from a speech contest?
Well, outside of second place in the World Championship of Public Speaking, it was in 2003 when I competed for my very first time in the International Speech Contest. It was the second time I competed. I competed that fall in 2002 in the evaluation contest and took second. But in 2003, I was competing in the district championship, and I was on the stage preparing for that evening. And I had seated in front of me my coach, Kat Angus, who's now Kat Savoris. And one of the funniest people I've ever known was Jay Nodine from North Carolina, who's unfortunately deceased. And the wait staff was setting up the tables, and I gave the speech, and I looked at them, and Kat was nodding her head, and Jay was sitting there like this, and he said, "What if you tried this?" And I said, I don't understand what you mean. And he gave me a better explanation. And I said, "No, I can do that." He said, "Okay, do that now." He said, now? He says, "Yeah, now." He says, "If you're going to do it tonight, you got to do it now." Okay. So I had to back up. I took a deep breath. I regrouped my mental thinking. I gave the speech again. And when I was done, I looked up, and Kat had tears coming down her cheeks. The wait staff took a break from what they were doing and applauded me. And Jay said, "You do that tonight and you will win." Well, here's a lesson I learned from that. You don't want to peak before the contest. I walked onto the stage that evening and I realized I had the wrong glasses. I had glasses that kept sliding down my T's. And I left the glasses that I had that would fit on the table. I said, "No, I'll go on and do that." In the middle of my speech, when I'm talking about my very first speech contest back in high school, where I blanked out completely, complete stage fright, the audience disappeared and everything, I blanked out in the middle of my contest speech at district. And as a result, I went 4 seconds over. So the message I want you to take away from this is the message I carry with me to this day. People always are asking you in competition, "Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?" My answer is always no. And even on the day of the contest, they'll say, "Are you ready?" I said, "No." "Well, when are you going to be ready?" I said, "I would be ready when I step onto the stage to compete, and not 1 minute sooner, because in 2003, I was ready 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Unfortunately, the contest was at 8 o'clock that night." Now, the good news is I found out later that I timed out, but I had actually won the contest. So those are the bitter lessons. And the other lesson I learned from that is you got to learn to discipline your disappointment. Discipline your disappointment, because there'll be good times when you win and you've got the world by the reins, and other times when it just doesn't go your way. And Mark Brown told me the answer to that is sometimes there's no accounting for judges. So you give the very best speech you can at the time you need to give it. Right. And after that, it's in the hands of somebody else. And if they like you and they favor you, you're good. If they don't, then you learn from that and get better next year.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Douglas. So it's like everything, right? We have to do our best and surrender the fruits of our labors, for the highest good. So I hear that. And that's an excellent example of, are we ever ready? until we're doing something. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to just ask for a quick logistics change. Linda, if you don't mind, on this question, I feel like when people are telling their stories, they need a little more time. Maybe we could go 2 to 3 minutes, like evaluation time. Okay, great, because that was a good story and I didn't want him to feel he needed to cut himself short. We'll roll with that. Anyone else have a story from a competition that good, bad, ugly, whatever it was, it will always be in your mind? Okay, let me hear from Marlo first and then Charles, because
when I was preparing for 2019, I worked with a person outside of Toastmasters that I knew very well. And as I began my speech, I remember our first practice. And as I began to talk about starting dialysis, I remember I cried and cried and cried and I couldn't stop. And the coach said to me something very important that resonates with me every time I speak now. He said to me, "Do you feel that?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Rest in that." He said, "Because that's what you're going to feel every time you speak. Now, can you speak over that?" And that made an impact for me, because every time I speak now, there's an emotion that I feel. And then I have to make a choice. Do I want the audience to feel that? Because sometimes there are emotions that you bring in speaking that can overwhelm the audience to the point that they can't even get the message that you want to bring. And then you can't complete a speech as well. And I had to sit there in that space where we were working. And I had to I know I wept for like 5 minutes. He said, "Okay, are you done? Suck it up and let's go." Okay, he was like, "Now catch your breath and press on." And that meant something to me. And that's it. So yeah, that helped me. Mm-hmm.
thank you for sharing that, Marlo. And that actually leads to a follow-up question I'm going to ask later. Thank you. It appeals to me when I think about mindfulness, that we can feel strong emotions, and Toastmasters trains us to be able to communicate those in a way that they don't take us down.
That's
right. They almost make us stronger. So Charles, you raised your hand and I know you have a good story, so I want to hear it. Oh, you're on mute right now.
Yes, I do. I remember 2014 because that was my first time on a district stage ever. And I remember someone asked me on the day of the district contest, was I ready? Was I ready? Because I was in the international that evening. And I said, yes, I said, yes. But then I remember Douglas asked me that like an hour before, and he asked me the same thing as I was going catching a plane to Malaysia. He asked me, "Are you ready?" And I said, yes. He said, he was like, "No, you're not." And at the time, I didn't really understand what he meant. I was like, yes, I'm ready. I'm as ready as I'll be. He said, "No, you're not. You're never ready until you step on the stage, because that's your last opportunity to change anything about your speech, what you feel, anything." And that's something that I've passed on to a few people that have asked me that same, when I've asked them, are they ready? That's something that you're never ready until you step on that stage, because that's your last opportunity to change anything.
Thank you for sharing, Charles. Any other stories that are marked in your mind that you want to share with the audience today?
Can I say something,
Yeah,
Fife?
please.
Okay. On my second year of competition for district, I was struggling with a speech. And every time I would compete, I'd lose my place, because I'm at that midpoint between having done a recent edit and having the next more perfect speech in mind. And I'm in that twilight zone between those two. But it was a contiguous story from start to finish. And that's the beauty of storytelling, is because storytelling will save your bacon when all else is failing. All I had to ask myself when my mind would go blank, I said, I don't know what the next words to say. I don't know what the next thing to say is. And I'd stop and I'd ask myself, where are you in the story? And I'd say, okay, here's where I am. He said, well, then you know what happens next. And then I'd go on and do what happens next. And Kat walked up to me after the contest. Man, that was one of the most spontaneous, it was just right on point. It's, no, it wasn't. I was completely lost throughout the whole thing. She said, stay that way, because you got that emotional turmoil going on. If you don't feel, as Marlo said, if you don't feel it, they won't feel it.
Mhm.
And I had that happen to me twice. In my regional competition was once where I reached that point at which I, like Marlo, cried in hers. And Anita said that David Henderson, if you watch David Henderson, he cries in all his speeches because he's feeling that raw emotion. And I got to that point, which is not easy for me because I don't like getting in touch with those raw emotions. I got to that point where I almost lost it. And I'm convinced that's why I won the regional competition. And I got to that point in my international speech. I'm having that turmoil moment with my dad, and I almost lost it there. And I could sense in the audience that they felt that too. So when you feel that emotion, you've got to feel the emotion. And maybe you don't go as far as crying every time you give the speech, because that can be a challenge. That'll wear you out. If you're giving the speech 100 times before you compete, it'll wear you out if you cry every time you do it. But you've got to be able to get to that point to understand what it is, where it is, and how to control it, so that you don't go over the edge and just completely lose it and lose all control. But if you don't feel it, the audience won't feel it. If the audience doesn't feel it, your delivery is flat.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for sharing. And so what I'm learning from you is that emotion is a really important part in your experience of speech contest, and maybe in a different way than some of the assigned speeches and pathways. Maybe they don't all require that inner depth and that inner fire. So I want to ask a question. Before I do, I would like to also invite the audience, if you have questions for the panelists, to put them in the chat, and our wonderful Zoom master, Margaret Sanders, will monitor that for us. I'm doing my best to be present here, and we'll hear from some audience questions as well. But my follow-up question related to this passion and this emotion, tell us about why you chose the speech you chose. Now, some of you have competed many times, but is there one that stands out for you of like, this speech, I had to give it, and here's why. So Anita, you're shaking your head, so let's hear from you first.
Listen. So the speech that I used to compete in 2018 was called Perfectly Imperfect, but it started out as a speech about this vase that my mother cherished. And I talk about this in my speech, and what it did was it helped me to relate the importance of embracing flaws and the beauty within the flaws. I had a son born with special needs in 2000, and telling a story that incorporated my love for him and the challenges that he went through in his life, as well as the challenges that my mother went through and my own challenges growing up, I was able to incorporate all of those experiences in one message. And I remember watching a coaching session by Brian Wolf, who was my coach actually. And he delivered a session on creating a winnable speech. And I think it was in 2016. And one of the things that he said was, we have to stand out as speakers in order to get our messages across. He talked about how we need to have a dynamic message delivered in the right way, right? And all I could think about was getting the message out. It wasn't about the medal, it was about the message. And my aim was to use these things that I was speaking and speak to those who are raising children with special needs, to those who have special needs, to those who are dealing with mental health issues, to those who are dealing with abuse. And I was able to bring all of that into that speech and impact. I said to myself, if I can impact just one person with this speech, then it's well worth it. It's well worth telling my story, being vulnerable, putting my business on the stage and leaving it there for others to benefit from.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So this has come up from many of you, that it's like there's something inside you that's going to help someone else in the world. And that's kind of part of being in the speech contest, is getting good at sharing that message. So any other folks want to share about why you spoke about, why you chose that speech? What was the message you needed to share? Charles?
I'll go back to 2014. The title of my speech was The Greatest Gift.
Mhm.
The reason why I chose that speech, because my grandmother came to me in a dream. Because at first I thought about not even doing the speech contest because I was going through some other stuff. But she came to me in a dream and said, you need to give this message out. Don't worry about the result. Just give it. And I remember I was practicing for a district, I believe, and I remember there was a point in the speech where I had a conversation with my grandmother, which was the climax. And I remember when I think Ray Hill was giving me an evaluation, he said, you finally got.
Mm.
It was either Ray or Douglas that said, you finally got what
Mhm.
this was about. Because I said something to her about what was it about me that made her give up her time to take care of me, because I was in the hospital at that point. And I remember she had her own issues that she was dealing with in her own career as a guidance counselor, but she took the time to fly all the way to St. Louis to take care of me and my issues that I was having. And I just remember I almost broke down having to deliver it the way I delivered it, because it was the deepest I had ever gone. So
Mm.
Mhm.
it's sometimes a message is just put there that you just have to give it.
That's right.
And don't worry about the result, because I didn't know I was going to win. But no matter what the outcome is, just give it, because you never know who needs to hear it at that time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you, Anita and Charles, for sharing. So we've gone. We've
Trent has a question.
okay. Oh, Trent has a question. Trent, would you like to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Sure. My question to the panel is as follows. Sometimes the best and worst fails make your speech that much more impactful.
Mhm.
What was that, for example, in my case, in Tall Tales, I literally blew my boots out during this speech, and it made the entire speech just so much more funny. What were some of yours? What was a fail of yours that actually made your speech more impactful? Thank you.
Mm.
Great question. Who would like to take that one? A big mistake or a big problem that actually made you better?
Oh, okay, you want
Let
to
me
go
hear
first?
from Marlo.
Okay. That's good.
For me, Trent, first of all, that's a great question. My biggest fail was the first competition. I believe it's area. Oh, I forgot. The first speech. I got up there and, like Mr. Douglas said, you're never ready. I went to the bathroom and I'm like, oh, get these jitters out. And you get up there and I got up there and all of a sudden there's a thing that happens to me when I speak, as I'm sure everybody can tell, I have a very deep voice, for a woman. And something happens when I speak at times is if I don't place my voice correctly, my voice begins to hurt to the point where I get a headache. And I hadn't placed my voice correctly and I began to get a headache as I spoke. And by the time I finished speaking, I had a serious migraine, but I had cried so much I ached so badly that when I left there, I had to go see my neurologist. And some medical things happened after that. So there's even like a preparation that has to take place, I know for myself, but not even, not knowing how to calm myself down enough to present a speech. That was something I learned from the first speech. That was my epic fail, not knowing how to ease down, or how I like to call it, not knowing how to tense down, because I'm ADHD or LLI to the next level, to the highest power. So I almost destroyed myself trying to deliver. So, don't kill yourself trying to be the best. That's a thing. And it's not worth it. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Great. Charles, you had an answer for the worst fail that made you better?
Yes. The worst. I would say sometimes overthinking a speech. Because I remember not that particular contest, but there was one in 2012 where I remember there was this speech I did where I thought I had it perfectly. And I went into the division contest, and I remember Douglas was there, and I got up there, and I started out just fine, but halfway through the speech, I forgot an entire segment of the thing, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like trying to piece it together, and I finally remembered I just continued on, and from where I was, I finished in time, but I just remember that sometimes you can overthink it so much that you forget a major portion. And just, if that happens, just continue through it. Because even then, there's a message in there that someone needs to hear it. And even though I didn't win that day, I learned from that to carry on, not only through the speech contest, but just through my speaking daily, through other speeches that I may perform. That no matter what happens, just continue on.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I'm going to call on Lauren next. I want to give you a heads up about that because we have gone deep. We have gone deep. We have felt some emotions. We have imagined being in your shoes on the stage full of this driven message that needs to come out. But I'm really a practical person as well. And I want to hear from Lauren's engineer brain. So let's say that I saw they're coming up in the spring. Let's say I'm thinking about trying a speech contest for the first time. what are some really practical things I should be doing to get ready for that? Or what did you do to get ready for that? Tell us some, like, okay, boots on the ground. What do we really need to be able to do?
I'd say to start getting your ideas on what you want to present now. My club meets every week. We meet on Wednesdays during lunch, and there's often an opportunity to speak. We schedule 3 speeches, but we often only have 2 speakers that step up to the plate. So be ready at the drop of a hat to just try it. Just give your speech, right? If it's not polished, if it's not perfect, if it's not something that you think you're going to end up with, so be it, right? Just take it to your club, give it opportunity. There's always opportunities to give your speech outside of your club. I know that there's area contests coming up for the evaluation contest, or division contest rather, I should say. And if you have the opportunity to be a target speaker and give it to a new audience, there's a new opportunity for you to speak. I'd say the second tip that I would give is work on your table topics, right? There's been several panelists that have talked about either freezing up or forgetting where they're going, or just being so in the emotion that you lose your train of thought. That's what table topics is, right? That is your opportunity to start from nothing, start at a place where maybe you didn't intend to get, and get back on track. That's what table topics is all about. Keep honing in your table topic skills, keep thinking on your feet. If you've got opportunities to present at work, maybe in short situations, try that too, right? For me, Toastmasters was absolutely an opportunity to hone in my skills of talking, delivering information to a manager who didn't have time to listen to my 5 to 7 minute well-polished speech, right? I joined Toastmasters absolutely for the table topics. So jump in where you can. Every opportunity to speak is an opportunity to grow, to learn a little bit more. And if there's a way that you can get out to other clubs or even other non-Toastmasters organizations, step up, take that opportunity if and when you can.
Great. Thank you for answering that, Lauren. And I'm going to pick on you one more time because, I haven't heard from you in a few minutes. And there's a related question, because I remember from our chat that you have actually participated in not only a speech contest, but a table topics, and there's evaluation. So for people who are maybe, new to this, maybe they're in Toastmasters or even new to Toastmasters, what are the different types of speech contests that you personally know about, and how are they different?
I've competed in the table topics competition, the evaluation contest, and the international speech contest. I'd say all of those feel normal. Maybe I'll say it that way. They're all things that we practice. They're all types of speeches maybe that we practice in our everyday meetings, in our weekly meetings. Trent mentioned blowing out his shoe at the Tall Tales competition. I was an area director the year that we, at least in my recent memory, the only time that we've had the Tall Tales competition, and I was not able to compete, and I was hugely bummed. We had some great speeches in my club area, and I think one of my club members did advance to the division contest, but I was bummed that I couldn't do that. I love, and I've always loved since I was little, I'm an only child, right? I need to come up with something to keep myself entertained. And when my mom tells me to go away because I'm bugging her with stuff, I have to come up with something. I just love the idea of some over the top, really, strange, really bizarre story. And in my home club, we're doing a scary story contest next Wednesday for Halloween. And I'm pumped. I am so pumped. I love a good ghost story. And this is just a way to, talk about something that's not serious, talk about something that's really creative, and, just putting it out there for the deck. If we happen to have a tall tale contest next year, you'd have at least one competitor for sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, because your energy and your smile when you talked about the tall tales really lit up. And for someone who has not even ever watched a speech contest, which is why I'm the perfect moderator, because I have a lot of questions and curiosity about it, you make me want to go to one. That's great. Well, I'm getting a message that we're going to wrap up soon. So I want to follow up with one question that I want everyone to answer, but we don't need the timer on this one, Linda, because they're only going to say one sentence. So the question is, if you're thinking about joining a speech contest, and your job is to fill in the blank with one sentence. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about that, because one sentence is tough. And then whoever gets their sentence ready. Okay, Douglas is ready. If you're thinking about a speech contest,
Go for it. Because everybody has a message that somebody needs to hear, whether it's perfect or not, whether you win a contest trophy or not. You've got to get in the mix because you reach a broader audience. Everybody needs to hear your message because somebody needs to hear that to change their life. And changing lives is what we're all about.
awesome. That's a great closing thought from Mr. Wilson. Anyone else like to finish that sentence? If you're thinking about joining a speech contest, Marlo.
If you're thinking about doing the speech contest, do it. There are jewels in your lessons learned, be there disappointments, or if they're victories, use Toastmasters to mine them out and share them with others. Mhm.
Thank you. Charles, you got to finish that sentence for us?
Yes. If you're thinking about entering a speech contest, do it. Remember, it's not about you. Sometimes God places you in a place, it's not about you. It's about, maybe he's trying to reach someone and you're the vessel that he uses. So do it.
Thank you. Lauren, if you're thinking about entering a speech contest,
You're already halfway there. Just go ahead and jump right in.
Anita, if you're thinking about joining a speech contest,
If you're thinking about joining a speech contest, you've already won. You've won because you decided to step out of your box and take a chance on yourself to benefit others.
thank you so much to these amazing panelists. Let's all give them a Zoom round of applause. Thank you to Linda for being in the middle box with your timing cards. Thank you to Margaret, who's been the Zoom master and chat master and arranged this beautiful spotlight. Thank you to Malvery for calling me every 2 weeks and making this happen and inviting us all to be here. I learned so much. I'm inspired. I'm taking away, it's not about me. It's about serving the higher good. So thank you to everyone and enjoy the conference.